And now is the time in our service where we enter into our meditation, and today I want to do something a little bit different. As we meditate today, I would like to invite everybody to hold the victims of the Surfside, Florida condo collapse in your mind. Let's hold them in this time of meditation and send healing prayers to the families and the friends of those who were victims of this collapse. So let's just close our eyes and just allow ourselves to just breathe naturally. And just begin to feel comfortable wherever you're sitting or perhaps lying on the floor at home. Just wherever you find yourself in this moment, just allow your body to relax. Feeling any source of tension anywhere in the body, just release at this moment. And as we sit here this morning, I invite you to use your power of imagination for a moment. And let's visualize a giant white ball of just pure healing energy filling this room right now at this moment. And knowing that we control this healing energy, let's envision ourselves sending this to Florida right now where it's needed the most. This ball of energy that is covering the area, the site of the collapse, and reaching out to anyone that was affected. Just allowing this healing to touch everyone that was affected by that moment. Filling them full of peace and just love. Surrounding them in the consciousness of God. Filling their hearts full of this loving energy and touching every cell of their body. Enfolding them in the healing presence of the God within. Helping them to remember the words of "Be still and know." And as we go into our moment of silence, I just invite you to continue to hold them in this place of peace and prayer, holding them in that healing white light, holding them in the love of the God within as we enter into our moment of silence. as we begin to bring our awareness back to this room, we know and we acknowledge that there is nowhere in this universe that is without God. Nowhere in this universe that the God presence within doesn't touch. No life that this God presence within doesn't touch. And we continue to hold those in Surfside within our thoughts and our prayers as we, in this moment and after we leave this room and this space. Holding them in the healing power of prayer. And we just continue to breathe in this moment. And we hold them in our hearts. And so it is, and so we allow it to be. Amen and namaste. They gave me a kazoo too, and I just couldn't help myself. Thanks, y'all. That was good. And thank you, Vicki, for joining us with us today. Vicki is Pete's and Anya's neighbor, and they've known each other for a very long time, so we're grateful to have her here today. All right. So happy 4th of July. And I'll just keep the celebration going. I'm Reverend Evin Wilkins, for those of you who I have not met today, so welcome to our service. So welcome everyone online that's attending this morning from home or wherever you may be. But does anybody have any plans today? Any picnics or going to fire up any grills or anything like that? Saw one hand raised. Come on, there's got to be more than that. Okay, last night, she says. Well, that's okay, but the party continues. I mean, for me, there's always an excuse to have a party, right? Mindy and I started our tradition a few years ago where we have hot dogs and apple or cherry pie. We also like peach, but we couldn't find peach anywhere. And we're like, that can't just be a Texas thing. Come on. You've got to have peach pie in Wisconsin. Okay. I'm not even going to touch that one. I don't know what that was. The North Ski Nook. Okay, I'll have to remember that. Y'all may have to remind me of what that's called again, because I probably won't remember. But another thing that comes to mind for me on the 4th of July, which I'm sure it's the same for everybody, is independence, right? I mean, we think about independence and freedom and things like that. So, yeah, I do think of hot dogs and pie, but I also think of independence. And I thought about that today and how to tie independence into spirituality, since I know it's also a church day. So I pull out my laptop and, I kind of start searching around when I'm getting ready to put this talk together. And I come across a man named David Hayward. Now, I mentioned his name to give him credit, but to be honest, I don't know much about him. So if you Google him and look him up and you find some weird stuff, don't come back to me and say, Evan, I found this weird thing. Because to be honest, I found his name on a website called Naked Pastor. But anyway. But I see some intriguement going on out there. But anyway. But he mentioned something called spiritual independence, so that caught my attention. And I thought it was some of what he talked about would tie in nicely today. So Mr. Hayward says that the purpose of spiritual independence is to help people become and remain spiritually independent. And he quoted the following 10 items as what he called his manifesto. He said, number 1, I am free. I always have been and I always will be. He says, I have the right to ask questions as a way to become wise. It is my right and responsibility to find and walk my own spiritual path. It is my duty to myself and others to remove the log from my own eye first. I take care of myself before I care about labels or what others call me. It is necessary for me to be true to myself before being true to a group. I recognize my roots, but I will not allow them to prevent me from changing. I embrace my unique spirituality and will let my light shine for others. I take charge of my life and will live it wisely, compassionately, and joyfully, and I am spiritually independent. Now, I'm not going to talk about each and every one of these today, but I did want to pick a couple to kind of go into a little bit of depth on. And I wanted to start with number 3, where he says, it is my right and responsibility to find and walk my own spiritual path. Now, anybody in here that's heard me speak before, you know that I will often refer back to my Baptist upbringing. As an adult, I look back on it and I realized that one of the things that bothered me so much about it was all of the limitations that I personally felt were placed on me with that belief system. For instance, there was never any questioning allowed, especially in the church I grew up in. I was often told that something was the way it was because that's what someone once told us the way things were supposed to be. And you didn't question it. To question it was right on up there with blasphemy. Yeah, and anybody that grew up Baptist knows what I'm talking about. But people in my Sunday school class would get this frightened look on their face when somebody would ask a question that appeared to be questioning something we just learned. And you'd see the other kids kind of look over that kid trying to awkwardly scoot over out of the way, hoping that the lightning bolt didn't hit them when it came down, right? But I began to feel a little bit differently as I grew older. Some of the things I realized, some of the teachings I realized I had never really bought much into in the first place. I was never able to believe that I was going to be sent to this place called hell or that other people were going to be sent to this place called hell just simply because they weren't Baptist. Because we were taught, we're like, okay, if you don't go to our church, bye-bye, you're going downstairs, buddy. But I had a hard time believing that, Yet the choice of what to believe and how to believe it was never my own. It never felt like it was my own. And that's what started bothering me. It seemed as if my walk with God was never mine alone, and the way that I felt was called to be mine. It was always dictated by someone else, and that just never really sat right with me in here. I had no independence, or I felt like I had no independence when it came to that journey. Only what someone else had set forth in front of me. And the thing is that it never fit. Because I was trying to walk someone else's version of spirituality. Almost trying to squeeze on a shoe that just didn't quite seem to fit right. But when in reality, I already knew, even if only subconsciously, I already knew what the universe, what God, whatever name you call it, was calling on me to be in my spiritual journey. I just had to remember my independence in that it is my right and responsibility to find and walk my own spiritual path. Now, the next one I want to talk about is number 6, where he said, it is necessary for me to be true to myself before being true to a group. So anybody in here remember the cool kids in school? Maybe you were one of the cool kids, I don't know. But if not, we all remember the cool kids in school, Most kids wanted to be one of the cool kids, one of the popular kids. And as a result, some kids would do just about anything to be a part of that group. Even if it meant completely forcing themselves to be or act like something they weren't or someone that they weren't. Sometimes we probably even still do this as adults, right? We want to be part of the group, somehow. So we'll kind of bend ourselves, even if it's maybe not quite somebody or something we really are, we'll kind of bend ourselves a little bit to fit into that group. We may try to conform into something we may not necessarily be, or act in ways in which we wouldn't necessarily normally act. Who wants to be the odd person out? It's kind of the way we feel sometimes. But at what cost? What cost do we pay when we try to conform ourselves into something that we're not? It just doesn't feel right, does it, when we try to do that? But see, one of the special things about each and every one of us is our uniqueness. The part of us that is authentically us, that makes us unique in our own ways, right? I wouldn't want to be the same person as Lloyd each and every Sunday. That's what makes us different. I didn't mean anything by that. Maybe I should have chose Lloyd, okay? Maybe I should have chose Heather or Joy, okay. So anyway, Lloyd might have been an interesting example. Okay, I would want to be like Lloyd because Lloyd is just a cool guy, but Lloyd is one of the cool kids. But when we attempt to be true to a group before we're true to ourselves, we bury that uniqueness that is our own, right? I mean, we take away our individual independence. That part of us that allows us to be independent and unique in our own special way. And while it's true, we're all interconnected on a spiritual level. But we also all have our own gifts, we have our own talents, and our own unique ways of navigating the world. And that's important for us to always remember. That's what is part of what makes us so special. And it's also important that we're true to ourselves before we're true to a group. It doesn't matter what other people think. And I know we all heard that as kids. My parents would be like, it doesn't matter what other people think. You're you. But let them think whatever they want. When we're true to ourselves, we experience the true independence of allowing ourselves to be part of the cool kids or to be part of Lloyd's group in our own unique way. So the next one I want to focus on is number 7. I recognize my roots, but I will not allow them to prevent me from changing. There's our roots. Our roots is that place that we came from. Our roots are that place that made us what we are today. And I mentioned my Baptist church earlier. Now, I don't do that because I still believe in some of those teachings, but because they are a part of my roots. They are a part of what made me who I am today. And it may not have always been pleasant for me, but it wasn't all bad either. I may not agree with the teachings, but I still have very fond memories of the church I grew up in. My great-grandmother, she was someone I was really close to as a child, and she served in that church for many years as a Sunday school teacher. And I even went through her class whenever I think she taught like the 5 and 6-year-olds, and I went through her class. But I remember going every Sunday just looking forward to being at that church and in that building because every Sunday we always stopped by and said hi to her. So that is a fond memory of that time, of me growing up in my Baptist church. But I also learned love and tolerance by attending that church. They didn't really specifically teach those things. It was more kind of a hell and damnation. But that was okay. Because at the end of the day, them not teaching love and tolerance showed me why it was all the more important that I teach those things and that I practice those things. Now, some of us may be thinking, about roots that we have that aren't so pleasant, right? Maybe some of us have struggled with addiction in the past or abuse, things like that in our lives. Those things that we would rather forget, but they're still a part of our roots. They're a part of our roots that we carry with us. But it doesn't mean that those roots will or can prevent us from changing. Think about the plants that wither every winter. Mindy and I, we have some bushes in front of the house, and we thought surely, when winter came, those things looked dead. As we would say in Texas, they look deader than a doornail. And we started talking about, we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to dig those things up. When spring comes, we're going to have to replant something else. And all of a sudden, we walked out, and they were starting to turn green. We're like, oh my gosh, they're still alive. They survived the Wisconsin winter. But the thing was about those bushes is that they didn't allow the way they appeared in the winter to prevent them from changing in the spring and from transforming in the spring. And we don't have to either. We walk this journey of life, and sometimes we endure experiences that they don't really seem like they make much sense at the time, right? Some things will happen. We're like, why is this happening? I can't think of why this is happening right now. And some of them make sense one day, and some of them may never make sense in this lifetime. But it doesn't mean that they take away our independence to grow and to change. We may recognize our roots, but we don't have to allow them to take away our freedom or our independence to transform into something completely different. And the last one I want to mention is number 9. I take charge of my life and will live it wisely, compassionately, and joyfully. So our life is ours to live, right? We're not living each other's lives, or somebody else isn't living our life. Our life is ours to live. And the choices that happen within our life are always ours to make. You know, we've been given this wonderful gift of choice. And with that choice comes this unbelievable independence. You know, there are times in my life where I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, that time I really chose to be miserable. Nobody was saying, Evin, you've got to be miserable right now. You know, I look back and I'm like, I chose to be miserable at that time. You know, and I realize looking back at that time, all that time that I wasted with that choice to be miserable. You know, the choice to live wisely and compassionately and joyfully is always mine. It's my decision. And sometimes it's frightening to make a different choice, isn't it? Sometimes it feels a little frightening, even if we know that choice is going to improve our lives for the better. Sometimes that choice is frightening. And we may even find ourselves asking, is the grass truly greener on the other side? Or even wonder, maybe it's just a myth that the grass is greener on the other side. I don't know. But we're never going to find out unless we strap on that parachute and take that leap of independence. That independence that allows you to choose how you're going to live your life. Not how someone else feels you should live it, but how you want to live your life, how you choose to live your life. So today on the 4th of July, we celebrate independence. Not just for our country, but for ourselves, our spiritual independence. And I encourage you to enjoy your grill. I know some of you did yesterday. But I encourage you to enjoy your grills, your hamburgers, your hot dogs, your pie, peach pie if you can find it. But enjoy your family and your friends. But I also invite you to enjoy and celebrate your independence of another kind today, your spiritual independence. So happy 4th of July, everybody.